Well, hi everybody, and today I'm going to be talking about my trail routine. And your first thought might be, well, isn't everything you've been talking about your trail routine? And in a broad sense, the trail routine broadly means, everything I do when I'm on a trip, on a hiking trip. Today, I actually literally mean what I do when I'm hiking, walking on the trail, like my daily routine while I'm on the trail. So there's a lot of topics to actually cover here. There's food, there's water, there's tracking my location, both my family knowing where I am and even I myself knowing where I am. There's what to do on rain days. There's the topic of 0 days, which is a rest day, 0 days, which is still a rest day, but getting a little bit of progress, and side trips that you might take. And then finally, I'll talk about what I call my 2-hour rule, which has to do with when I stop for the evening. Now, I happen to when it comes to hiking on a trail, I'm one of these people that I just don't like stopping to rest. I mean, that's just me. Is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. Different people have different opinions on it. A lot of people do rest for what seemed to me considerable time, but then they end up going farther or making better overall time than me. So they're probably onto something. But I just like to just keep going. I say slow and steady, but I am, or at least on my most recent long trip, I was doing 2.25 miles an hour on average, which is pretty good because that's like 50% faster than I used to be able to section hike at. So I have a formula for miles per trail bar. I mean, when I get up in the morning, when I talk about breakfast, I'll go over that. But when I get up in the morning, I kind of look ahead and I say, average day is about 15 miles. I'm just going to grab 5 trail bars out of my, the enclosed part of my pack and stick them into the easily accessible pockets on my backpack. So as the day goes on, I can munch on them every 3 or 4 miles. I'll have something to eat, whether I feel like I need it or not. One of the worst feelings is when you run out of energy mid-afternoon because you haven't been eating enough. It's hard to make up for that. You can get your second wind, but it's just nice to keep on the way to keep the calories coming in. Now for breakfast, I up until now have not been cooking breakfast for myself. I've been eating breakfast, but it's been usually cold. It'll be maybe a peanut butter sandwich. It'll be, a trail bar, not one of the 5 that I carry with me while I'm going, but something else. And I hate to admit this, but if I've been at a resupply and I've picked up Pop-Tarts or something like that, I know it's junk food. It's really not what I would normally eat. But when you're out on the trail, I think with all the exercise you're doing, your body's going to be a little bit forgiving of maybe the standard American diet sort of content of what you're eating out there. Though there are people who are very strict, and if they're vegetarians, they stick with the vegan, vegetarian diet. If they're vegans, they stick with the vegan. And I have run into a couple low carbers, like myself. I am a low carber, but they actually on the trail were able to maintain that. So that's something I'm going to be trying to get towards. I don't really not think of it as low carb as much as my body being in fat burning mode, so I can eat fatty foods and know that that's being burned off. But a good point about this whole thing, when I say at breakfast I don't eat, I don't want to go through the trouble of having to get my stove out and hook something, heat something up. I recently, my children, I got from my children for a birthday gift a coffee strainer sort of thing where you can put it's just like a drip coffee thing at home, except it's portable. You can basically pour the boiled water through it and get a cup of coffee in the morning. Now that's something I haven't been having on the trail. The only time I'll have that is if I'm at a hostel and it's available there, or if I'm at a hotel overnight, which occasionally happens when I'm out on the trail. The point of that is, no matter what my routine is, it can evolve, it can change. And this coffee device that my kids got for me is actually giving me a little bit of a push. I have been thinking, and I think I mentioned this before, I've been thinking about switching from my Esbit stove to a Jetboil, at least maybe for, you know, the shorter 1 week trips. If I stay with the Esbit portable stove for a variety of reasons for a longer trip, well, then I probably wouldn't bring the coffee maker with me. But on a 1 week trip, it might actually make it a little more enjoyable. So my point is, whatever your routine is, think of it as set in wet concrete, not carved in stone. The idea of the routine is to take as many mundane decisions off your back or off your plate, whatever metaphor you want to use, in order to concentrate on what you really should be concentrating on, and that is like enjoying the hike. You know, these mundane things are more like chores. They've got to be done. If you can do them on autopilot, which is what is the point of having a routine, I think you'll enjoy it more. I certainly do. So breakfast, like I said, is something cold, something quick. I'm not going to talk about dinner when I talk about food on this video, because that's really more of a camp routine thing. Though there is a saying, you know, I don't know exactly what the saying is, but a warm meal at night makes you better prepared to hike in the morning. So that's an important part of what I do. Excuse me. That I do have a good dinner the night before, and I'll cover that when I talk about my actual camp routine. Lunch is usually, if I have it with me, a low carb, a soft taco sort of thing. I found that bread does not keep on the trail, it gets moldy. Never eat bread with any mold on it. I mean, even if you say, oh, if the mold's only there, I'm going to cut it out. No, that's the part that you see. But once the mold has started to form, in fact, it is all throughout the bread. You just can't see the invisible part, or whatever food it is. Just toss it out. Just don't take the chance. So for lunch, like I said, the soft shell taco shells work pretty well as a bread substitute. I'll have some peanut butter or tuna fish. You know, the tuna fish packets, not in the cans, but the foil packets. That works out for me. So when I say I had like the 5 trail bars, that's not all I'm eating. I'm having breakfast. I am having lunch. Those other things are just sustaining me through the day. Trail magic. Trail magic is when some kind person who loves hikers, is probably a hiker themselves, or, you know, has been a hiker themselves, leave out or are actively passing out food and supplies. And, you know, when you come across that, you are kind of obligated, at least if you're going to take anything, to sit and chat for a while, and that's a good break. There's a rest. Like I said, I don't schedule rest, but if I come across some trail magic that is what I'll call active trail magic, there's actually somebody there. Hey, it's good to exchange stories with them, show your appreciation. They will. I have never seen them accept a donation of any kind from you. Even when I have set up with a friend, participated, actually he set it up, Mike has set up a trail magic in Great Barrington, we refuse all donations. You know, when somebody asks how do you fund this, we said we opened up our wallet and we saw money there and we spent it. So the idea though is never pass up an opportunity for trail magic. When you're out hiking, it's really about conservation and proper use of resources, and those resources are what you're carrying with you. And if you can stretch a resource because somebody's kind enough to provide you with some calories or something to drink. Now, I don't drink alcohol. Sometimes they'll have beer and stuff like that. I won't go near that just because that's just not my lifestyle. I just don't drink alcohol, never really have. I mean, it's not like I've been dry for 64 years, but in general, I just don't drink if I have one wine cooler in a year. That's a lot nowadays for me. So never pass up trail magic. Don't overdo it. There are other hikers out there. You don't want to get greedy. But if you have some needs, probably the best bit of trail magic I come across is tangerines. There's just something about them, to be able to munch them, on the trail. And I always feel like, oh, I wish I'd taken 4 when I only took 2, because I am a little embarrassed sometimes if I'm really loading up from a trail angel. I mean, they love to see it usually, but again, don't be greedy, especially if you know there's a lot of hikers on the trail. And the other way to stretch your supplies is always never pass up a roadside eating opportunity. When Mike Conti and I were in New York and New Jersey, the opportunities there, that was just so fantastic, because that's a little more, or a little less remote, say, than Maine, where there are very few opportunities where you'll come across a road and actually have an opportunity to buy a bite to eat. In New York and New Jersey, when you're going through the mid-Atlantic state, especially going through Shenandoah National Park, the waysides there, I always take a chance, because you're really on restricted rations when you're out on the trail. And to be able to stop at a place and to say, get a burger at a grill, or even a full meal at one of those restaurants there, is just it's just fantastic. Another eating opportunity, at least I had in Northern Virginia, Southern Pennsylvania, and I mentioned this in another video, is wine berries. I was not shy about picking wine berries. I happened to be going through as they were ripening. Also blackberries, some of them were ripe. Just a fantastic way to stretch your supplies. So that's what I do on the trail. In summary, a bar for every 3 or 4 miles. Assuming I'm going to do about 15 miles in a day, so that's 5 bars. I might do more, I might do less. At lunchtime, I can assess where I am, and if necessary, reload the bars into my pockets there. Okay, so water. Now, this is a real important one. I like to start the day, especially if the water situation ahead of me is unknown. I start the day with at least 3 liters, sometimes 4 liters of water on me. For hydration, I did have a short video, I think it was on my On the Trail series, or Trail Vignettes, one or the other. The CHRM, the Craig H. Ellsworth rehydration method. I am going to be rehydrating through the day, at least every 20 minutes, taking a sip. I happen to use a platypus bladder that is in my pack. I also can't see how much is in it. It lasts pretty good. The 3 liters that it holds will last pretty good for a long while, but when it runs dry, I don't want to be caught without water, so I always carry usually a 1 liter spare bottle that I actually don't touch until I run dry on the platypus pack. And then when I'm into that, if it's a hot, humid day, that actually can be earlier in the day. But once I get into my reserve water bottle, at that point I know I am going to take whatever the next opportunity is to refill my water, no matter how inconvenient it might seem. There are times I've actually had to spend 30 minutes at just a little trickle of a stream. It's clean water, relatively clean water, but to fill up my water filter and then filter into the bladder so that I could continue on for the day. So that's the rule, is to stay hydrated. As soon as I hit my reserve, or am pretty sure that I'm about to hit my reserve, that's when I'll do some filtering on the trail. Never make the mistake of maybe trying to stretch your water too far. I mean, sometimes you're forced to. Sometimes there's just no water out there. You hit a stretch of trail with no water. Take every opportunity you can to refill. And if you ever come across what I'll call, I forget the word for it, but water faucets, like in a state park or something like that, where it's not taking it out of the stream, something that you won't need to filter, absolutely just fill up there. to let your filter is a limited resource, and you want to stretch that. So anytime you can fill up from a civilized water source that's known to be clean, by all means do it. That's less stress on your water filter, or uses fewer of your water drops or whatever treatment you're using. You're preserving some of it. And then finally, if you know you're going into a dry camp, and that happened to me a couple times in Virginia. In one case, they were quite upfront about it and said this particular camp has no water source near it. So I actually, I would say it's hard to know what the nearest water source is going to be, but when I was about, I don't know, a mile or two from this particular campsite, and I found a stream, I filled up, and not only did I load up with my reserve of a liter, my 3 liters in my platypus pack, but I also put as much as I could into my filter bag. So I actually came into camp with 2 gallons. And that may sound like a lot. I mean, that's 15 pounds worth of water. I mean, you can do it, or I can do it if it's only a mile or two. And when I get into my camp routine, you'll see why 2 gallons might actually be an appropriate amount for me going into camp. So if you know you're going into a dry camp, like I said, some camps, they just said there's no water source. Other camps, other hikers would tell you, yeah, the water source is dried up, so that's as good as a dry camp. Be prepared for that and go into camp with as much water as you're comfortable carrying. And when I get into the camp routine, we'll talk about that. Yeah. Tracking, I have my Garmin Inreach. I get in the habit of recharging it overnight, so I have to touch it in the morning, which forces me to remember to turn it on into tracking mode. I happen to set it for every half hour. That way Darlene can be confident that I'm moving, because if I'm not moving and I haven't told her that I wasn't going to be moving, she understandably gets a little worried that something has happened. Whenever I can bring maps with me of the area, sort of as a backup to my my phone maps. I have maps on my phone. There's the ones associated with the Garmin Inreach, but there's also the far out ones, which is the new name for Guthook. So if you've heard of Guthook and you're used to thinking of Guthook as your source of information, it's now called Far Out. There are other companies out there, and I know that other hikers use other companies. I happen to use Guthook. The nice thing about Guthook is it can track where I am. In other words, I can look at it and know exactly where I am. I can see if I've wandered off the trail, because sometimes you get on a side trail and don't even realize it. Or if you just kind of get lost off the trail, having Guthook, assuming your phone has a GPS built into it, and most of them do nowadays, even if you're in airplane mode, which I'm discussing next. Again, if you're in airplane mode and you've got Guthook, you can still tell where you are. What I would suggest, however, is again, as a method of preserving, in this case, the limited resources, your battery life of your phone and your battery backup, which you may be carrying with you. Keep the phone in airplane mode, and when you're not in Guthook, literally close the program. If you don't, the GPS will continue to run, and that will take some battery power. I put my phone in airplane mode during the day if I know I'm not going to need to communicate throughout the day. The reason I do that is because my phone is my camera, and I don't want to actually turn it off and have to turn it back on. Airplane mode is a pretty good compromise on not using too much of your battery power, but then having it still readily available for taking on-trail videos and on-trail photographs. So I recommend that you keep it in airplane mode. You can take it out of airplane mode once in a while if you know you're waiting for a message to come in from a family member or something like that. So that's just a tip there. Next topic is rain days. Okay, it's raining out. Do you hunker down or do you hike? Well, rain is a fact of life out on the trail, and my feeling is, unless it's pouring, if it's a nice gentle rain or it's a spotty rain that's on and off during the day, just just go ahead and hike in it. If you don't have an inner liner for your pack like I do, be sure to put a pack liner, on the outside, a pack protector. You do want to keep everything as dry as possible inside your pack. Rain gear, I've had mixed results with rain gear. Some of the rain gear I've had wetted out really quickly. It was like not wearing any rain gear at all. Sometimes you just go for it. Just hike in your regular hiking clothes and don't bother with the rain gear. You do have to be aware of and protective against hypothermia. That's when your body temperature gets too low. Hyperthermia, when your body temperature gets too high, which can happen out on the trail. Watch out for hypothermia. If you're getting too cold, by all means, cover up, find some shelter, cut your day early and hunker down in the shelter. Whatever it takes, even light a campfire if you can in the rain. Sometimes a shelter, it's got enough wood supply around, and it's maybe a little undercover. I mean, in the woods, a lot of times it can be raining, unless it's an absolute downpour. It can be raining relatively, something in between moderate level, and things are still staying pretty dry under the canopy of trees. Another saying we have is slippery when rock. Just be aware of that. If you're aware that your day's hike or some of the hiking ahead is going to be very rocky, you might I always consider whether maybe that's the time to take a break. And if I come to a shelter, for example, midday, maybe stay there for a while until the rain lets up. Even if it lets up, the rocks are still going to be wet, but it's a lot easier dealing with wet rocks when it's not actually raining out than when it is. So just keep that in mind. Zeros, Neros, and side trips. Well, question is, do you plan them? It might actually, you got to know yourself. It might actually be a good idea to plan your 0 days. A 0 day is a day in which you literally go 0 miles. The question is, do you do it as a plan? Do you do it when you feel like it? I made the mistake, I would say it was a mistake, of not taking any 0 days until it was forced upon me. I twisted both my ankles, and I still wasn't at a good place. I mean, I made it to a shelter. I was low on supplies, so I did have to hike 2 or 3 miles the next day on twisted ankles, but at least I got to a hostel, and I was able to do my 0 day on the hostel. Now, it's more expensive to do that because you got to pay for 2 nights on the hostel, but it's probably a little better to do that. Usually your hostel opportunities are kind of combined with resupply opportunities. So if you can arrange it and you're going to take a 0, some hikers have told me every 2 weeks they do it. I went an entire month without a 0 day, and I was feeling fine right up until the moment that I needed the 0 day. So it's hard to tell. I think it's just something that goes with experience. I think what I will probably do on my next trip is just say, at least once every 2 weeks, I'm going to try taking a 0, most likely either at a very nice campsite or more likely at a hostel. So that's and also I haven't talked about side trips, but you're out there to enjoy the trail. Go ahead and enjoy a side trip once in a while. A side trip, maybe go to a local tower. Like when Mike and I were in New York and New Jersey, we actually passed up the opportunity to go to High Point, New Jersey. There's an obelisk out there, a tower or something. I don't know if you can climb it or not, but we bypassed that opportunity. We were 20 minutes too late to go through the Bear Mountain Zoo, but we took other opportunities of little things to do while we were out there. When I was in Virginia, I took the opportunity to visit my high school track coach. It's just like, it's good to remember that there's more to a hiking trip than just the hiking. So I'd recommend, plan some side trips. If there's a local attraction of some kind, whether it's a cave tour, Luray Caverns. I didn't happen to stop at Luray Caverns, but that's somewhat close to the trail, near Front Royal, I think, or maybe a little bit farther south. I'm not sure, but I could have gone to Luray Caverns, and if I'd never been there, I've actually been there twice. So for me, there wasn't as big a motive to go there. But if you're hiking through that area, I would recommend that take a day, go to Luray Caverns. Just a beautiful tour. Okay, the final thing I want to talk about is I have what I call a 2-hour rule, and that rule I just developed from experience. My 2-hour rule is simply this: if I find a good camping spot and I'm within 2 hours of sunset, I'm going to take it. I don't want to ever get caught having to hike after dark. It's even very difficult to set up a camp after dark, set up a tent after dark. And if you're showing up after dark, depending on the hiking season you're in, you might not be able to use a shelter even if there is one there. So I take if I find a good spot, even if it's a stealth spot and it's within 2 hours of sunset, I'm going to take it. If there's a couple exceptions here, you got to use a little common sense. If I don't know where the next prospective camp is, or I do know where the next prospective camp is and it's just out of reach for me, I would say if I'm, I hit that 2-hour point and I do see a campsite, but I know that the campsite I'm headed to is only a mile ahead, that's about a half an hour, I'll go ahead and go to that next campsite. If it's known, go for it. So, but that is actually one of the most important rules that I actually follow. So I'm sorry, this video turned out to be surprisingly long. I thought it was going to be simple, but as I'm talking, just more and more stuff is coming out. So if you've stayed to the end, I can see that it's been almost a half an hour. Thanks for listening. And next time I'm going to start going over my actual camp routines.